Amber, what's cooking today for my favorite chef?
What's cooking? Oh gosh, I'm not really cooking anything. It's so great to have a kid that you raise to be a chef so that then you don't have to chef anymore. And although they're fully grown and moved on, I just find myself less inclined to want to like push the boundaries in the kitchen because they're doing it for me. So I live vicariously through that. And yeah, not doing a whole lot of cooking. Although I love cooking, and it has become sort of a stress relieving thing for me because, I guess I'm very confident in the kitchen. But yeah, not so much with actual cooking anymore.
Well,
That was
that's
a
kind
lot
of
of
fun.
food.
No, that's good. Your food metaphor played quite well into the question I'm going to ask
Oh,
today.
okay, because I don't really know where we're headed. So,
Well, I wanted to talk about something that you and I have talked about off mic before, but I
mhm.
think it's really important. And in one of our most recent podcasts, I was talking about a Simon Sinek podcast with WD-40 CEO Gary Ridge, and I
Mm,
could not recall Gary's name on that, so I apologize, Gary. Um, but in that podcast, Gary was talking about the culture they established at WD-40.
okay.
And one of the things he thought that was really important was to get rid of the notion of manager. They completely eliminated the title from the entire company, and
Okay.
anyone who was a manager became coach.
Whoa.
And so rather than, hi, it's your first day, I'm here to manage you and direct where you're going. Hi, I'm here to coach you and help you get to the space so that you can achieve success and be your best.
Mm,
And I just heard you talk about your own child there. And I don't
mm.
believe, having known you a long time, that you managed them into this space around
No.
chef.
Oh gosh, no, the opposite.
But
They
coach them.
refused.
You have
Yeah.
most certainly provided a coach experience for them to become their fullest chef self.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting notion. I love the idea of doing away with managers only because I find management to just be insufferable. However, I'm biased, so I admit that bias. I think the reason I find management to be insufferable is that so often people are put in management roles because of tenure, not because of talent and training for that matter. Or the training is a box checking mechanism. Oh, they've had all the right training. Okay, so they can be manager. Who says? Management really is leadership and should be seen as leadership, in which case the rubric for whether this individual can lead or not is a very different conversation than did they get the right training? Because training is also unsuccessful for a lot of people who don't show up with engagement. They just sit in the room. You're a trainer. You've worked as a trainer for years. And I mean, as an educator myself, there's a certain amount of training that I'm doing. And if there's no engagement, they'll still get the certificate at the end. And you kind of go, that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they're going to get the reward of effort, even though the engagement was so poor to average. So yeah, management, I love the idea of doing away with that. But I think more it's a mind shift. And it's interesting. I don't love that they call them coaches.
Hmm.
And here's why, because coaches should never tell anyone what to do.
Hmm.
And I do think in a management environment, in an organization, people do need people to tell them what to do. That doesn't mean to tell them everything. I'm not talking about micromanaging. I mean, management exists because there does need to be a place to go to remind and refresh what is it we're doing here and have that we're doing these 5 things and management, here are the 5 things that we're doing or whatever. So coach, in my mind, as a coach, because I work as a coach, is never about telling someone what to do. It is only ever, in my opinion and my experience, asking and supporting that person's journey, which I think for a lot of people could be incredibly disempowering if you're not also mentoring. So mentors are different. Mentorship is actually about teaching. Mentorship is about guidance, sharing my experience, sharing these are the things that I have done, I have seen successful, I know to be true of this situation. Mentorship is actually teaching and training. Coaching, in my experience, is never that. So I don't love that they went from management to coach because I don't feel that connection is appropriate. However,
Mhm.
that's my bias. And also I think as it relates to my child, my adult child that is a chef, they didn't want to be a chef. In fact, the fact that I was a chef repulsed them. Not the food part, but the idea that I did that for a living or that was they didn't like it at all. And I think to a certain extent it was, I don't want to do what my parents doing, which is fine. So I really did not mentor them very well. Now, did they learn knife skills from me? Yes. Did they grow in confidence with ingredients from me? Yes. But not because I taught them those things, because they observed. They took the initiative and they witnessed. And, I had a cooking school for many years. They were adjacent to the cooking school. They bore witness to a lot of culinary stuff. And so I'm not surprised that they liked it and had value for it. But the fact that I was in the mix repulsed them because, ooh, my parent. Then the day that they finally said, I think I'd like to go to culinary school. First of all, I picked my jaw up off the floor when they said that to me. And then very much I went into coach mode. And I was strategic about that because I knew that they had been so turned off by the notion for most of their life. I didn't want to do anything to alienate them from a culinary career based on their mother did it, because that was a sticky point for them. So I just immediately went into, I'm not telling you or teaching you or showing you anything anymore. I am just going to ask you questions and coach you. So then I was very strategic about that. And yeah, and I did coach and I continue to. But it's coaching is, like I said, it's framing questions, it's helping support being when I coach an individual, it is that I am seeing you, I am hearing you, I value you, but I exist here to be your number one support. I do not exist here to teach or train you to do anything. And for me, that's a big distinction. Um, and that's how I handled it with my child. However, my child went to school. My child did 3 years of culinary school, got their Red Seal certification. Like they did the teaching and the training, but that wasn't my job. And it couldn't have been. It felt very intentional that my role was only to coach them. So getting back to the management analogy, I don't think that holds up in an organization because we do need to train and teach and be in that sort of cycle. And I don't think that management to coach does that. So that's my 10 cents.
No, I love it. And, you know, um, first off, great analysis. Loved all of it. Uh, there's very different roles between coach and management, absolutely, and
Yeah.
certainly. But there was one piece through in your throughput that in my brain I was like, wow, okay, this is a space that I don't know that you and I've even really talked about before, because we've talked about team charter and how in projects we collaboratively agree on team. But I don't know that we've ever talked about group or team coaching
No, I don't think so.
because when you're doing one-on-one coaching or executive coaching or whichever brand of coaching you're doing that has one person only, I 100% agree that you should be there in service to that person.
Right.
Um, I think the other thing that you and I would agree is that coaching is the art of questions. That you're going to go into it with a question and an open mind and a not preconceived notion of what the answer is going to be, but that you're providing questions that are going to help expand.
Right.
But, you know, I come from a background in group and team coaching, which is put, anywhere from like 7 people to like 30 people together and say, we're going to coach this issue now. It's still questions.
Yeah.
And you're right. Sometimes training does need to happen in a different space.
Yeah.
But in terms of leader, if all we're doing is providing the space to create support in group and team coaching, there's a space for directiveness and a space for non-directiveness. And you always want to move to the most non-directive possible.
Okay.
But you kind of got to come in and say, like, we're here today to accomplish this.
Mm-hmm.
The how is left out of the equation.
Yeah, and I think that's
question.
And that's my point with coaching, is that the how is left out of the equation right from the predisposition of I'm coming in here to coach, which is why I think managers never go in like that, because it's like the bottom line of a manager is to make sure it's done and to do it for others if even need be, right? On behalf of, like, in most hierarchical structures, management, they're the only ones that are going to get held accountable. It's their job to hold their employees accountable, but the person that's going to hold the manager accountable is not holding the employee accountable. So because it's that hierarchical chain, that's why I'm like, the coach thing, it's not the full enough picture of what's going to have to happen, because you can't, yeah, anyway, I get it. But team and, yeah. Don't you feel at a baseline, though, as humans in a professional setting, we just really still suck at collaboration because we have so much of our own stuff in the way? And that exacerbates this whole conversation?
Yeah, of course. So if I asked a simple question like this, would you rather be managed or would you rather be coached?
Yeah, I mean, there's no question.
Yeah.
Coached.
And for now, about what do I think in the workplace is going to increase engagement?
Yeah.
Management or coaching?
Yeah.
And I put those two as just very simple things, because if I, take any group of new employees or any new endeavor and brought them in the room and on day one said, hi, I'm your new manager. I'm here to make sure that you meet your results. I'm here to make sure that this is what's going to happen. This is my accountability, your accountability, and let's go. Pretty standard management conversation.
Actually, I was just thinking that sounded great, because what you did right there, if that's where it lived only, management would be incredibly effective, right? Because we all need those things.
Sure.
And that's where my argument is, if we're just going to coach, then where does that come from?
So again, perfect. And I love it because that works when we shake hands.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is management requires the shaking of both hands, especially around results.
Right.
Does management always shake hands on results? Or can management come in and say, yeah, I know you're making 50 yesterday. I need you to make 75 today.
Oh.
And there's no
I can't shake my hand to that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So when I say coaching, what I'm saying is, imagine it's your first day and it's like, hi, these are the results I need to produce. I'm here to make sure you can do that. If you need me to answer questions for you, sure, we can answer some questions. If you need some mentoring, I got some mentoring right over there for you.
Right.
You tell me what it is. This is what I need you to do. I need you to move these from A to B. I don't care if you walk them, run them, crab walk them, swing on a vine, whatever it is that you can do this over there to this result within this constraint.
You know what I just had an image of? And that is, oh my gosh, we're having this conversation today, right now, Martin, in 2026, because the workforce has completely shifted, because the generations that we have raised are intolerant of management because of the way that we have raised them. And I, it's funny, when you launched this conversation, I wasn't thinking about that. But now I'm like, now I understand why we're doing this. That is, we have to change these things. This is an adaptation. This is a keeping up with the way things are, because a 20-something right now, that arguably that I raised them to be wholly independent, empowered, and to take their worth from an intrinsic value that they possess, that no one has given them. Now, whether I did that well or not is subject to change, and that's an evolving thing. But that was my hope. Most parents in my generation, we had the opportunity to empower our children in a way that we were not empowered. And as a result, now not me personally, because I suck at being managed, but people of my age and of my stage needed management in a way because it followed far more along the lines of how they were raised, because we were raised by managing and micromanaging environments and parented that way. We also were in higher education and in, just elementary school education that was very much that way. Now, a lot of the elementary school education still exists today to produce people like that. But of course, parents are raising children differently. We're raising empowered individuals, and that flips the script on how our workplaces need to function. So from that perspective, I will give the WD-40 CEO the win on changing the language from manager to coach, because immediately coach, I think, it's definitely headed in the right direction. And I loved the image that you gave, which was, okay, I'm a coach. I'm here for your success. I've got mentorship here. I've got training. I've got tools. I'm here to support you, whatever you need. So that far more valuable than saying, I'm your manager and this is what you need to do for me. And quite honestly, I don't know a lot of the most recent generations entering the workforce that really would subscribe to tell me what to do, man or woman or person, because most of them are like, I'm here to show you what I can do. And because we empowered them to do that. Right?
Well, I love the way you said it. I always come back to, Covey had 4 principles for an empower being 3. You start with trust, that I can be trusted, trustworthiness.
Mhm.
Then you go to interpersonal trust. You and I can agree that we're going to trust. Number 3 is the first organizational principle, and that's empowerment, which is I give you the power to.
Mm.
And then number 4 being alignment, and we're moved in the same direction.
Right.
So empowerment really is I give you the power to, and management at its genuine heart is to not give you the power to.
Right.
It's to have you produce the result of.
Mhm.
Because you don't, and you manage things.
Yeah.
I have no problem managing my bank account.
Mhm.
I have no problem managing my household.
Mhm.
Those are things.
Mhm.
No problem managing things. When we looked at the spreadsheet of how we did leadership or parenting
Yeah.
through the early half of the 20th century, it's children are to be seen and not heard.
Oh,
It is,
yes.
yes, you lived it and I
Yes,
lived it.
I did.
It is this notion of disempower.
I was an unsuccessful as much as I was told to be seen and not heard, it was unsuccessful. My parents did their darndest to make it that way.
Yeah.
At the same time, I will say my parents also were probably on the cusp.
Yeah.
Because I was raised by entrepreneurs. What the entrepreneurs would never want would be to create an environment where their own child didn't feel the ability to be autonomously energized and be themselves and find their own way. Because entrepreneurs, just by natural kind of intent, are creating an environment. So they were, even though there was a be seen and not heard element to some of it, actually there wasn't. But I really take that cue from entrepreneurship, from the idea that they were blazing trails for themselves, and I got to blaze along with them, and that created this sort of provocative version, this feisty approach, very much rooted in my upbringing. But the way I raised my children, in the early years, probably a lot more command and control because I didn't know what I was doing. But as I grew and emerged and they got older, I realized, oh no, actually, I want them to hold their power as long as possible and not give it away. And um, I think most parents now in this generation have very much that intention to um, look into the eyes of their children, see the value that they bring as unique individuals, and then want to cultivate that as opposed to tell it what it needs to be.
You just, for me, as you said that, a light bulb went on for me, which is the opposite of management is discipline. And certainly we had discipline.
Oh, gosh.
Do this or be disciplined too.
Yeah.
Where when coach doesn't work, its opposite is to get even more curious.
Yeah.
What is the curiosity here that's not successful?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, if we're going to talk about engagement and result,
Mm-hmm.
would you rather have a system of discipline or a system of curiosity?
Yeah. There's no contest for me. But I do think also for the generations in the workforce that are older, that have been, they have lived in a world that expected different things from them. Hearing this is a sticking point for them, because being told what to do means you know where you stand. And I do think there's something to that. Like, in general, humans don't thrive in uncertainty. That doesn't mean that we can't build resiliency and get better at it. But in general, we want a level of certainty. In fact, we will manufacture it in order to have it so that we can feel confident. And so much of even my life has been about manufacturing my own certainty so that I could feel more confident. And, that doesn't hold up now, but it certainly was a tactic I used for many, many years. And I think sometimes older generations have had to do this. And this is what also makes us so distant sometimes in conversations, or polarized in conversations with one another, is we forget our humanity is identical. We all share that. But in professional environments, we have experienced the world differently. And so when our world is combined and it's colliding, that is a very different environment, and it can make us feel like the level of uncertainty is too much.
Look, I'm with you 100% on that. If we're looking at, and I'm just going to call this cultural ideation
Mhm,
by multi-generational workforce,
mhm,
we know we have a workforce today that has, I don't want to say polar ideas, but certainly a range of ideas so great
mhm.
that to try to find cohesion is pretty tough.
Well, and I think as technology advances so rapidly, you have individuals my age who like my tongue is hanging out. I'm panting trying to catch up with technology, and I recognize, like, I was not like, there weren't even computers when I was born, right? Like, I'm just aware that my need to stay on top of has been a much bigger lift
Sure.
than generations have come after me when it comes to technology in a
Mhm.
workforce.
Absolutely. And when you're dealing with technology, look, you and I are from a generation. I remember when there was the great high school debate as to whether or not you should be allowed a calculator in the classroom.
My goodness,
I
yes.
remember when GPS wasn't considered a viable way to have topographic map reading. But you
Wow.
had, and today, those are like,
They're
you think
laughable.
about them and you're like, what? Those were conversations we had?
Yeah, you're right. I remember those
And so
conversations.
I look at a chat GPT today and I'm like, why can't you use that tool again?
Yeah.
And my brain is like, well, I know I'm old,
Yeah.
but I'm having trouble
Mhm.
going, if it's a tool and it's in the world, and I was never, I mean, I love one of the best definitions I ever heard for generation is what was always normal for you. And so
Mhm.
generations used to be measured in 20 and 30 years.
Yeah, no,
And
not fair.
generations are now like you can like it's like 4 years of this and it's
Yes.
already a different thing.
Yes. Well, and I think we learn that through the pandemic as well,
Yes.
because the pandemic actually created its own experience and
Mhm.
generational gaps, let's say, because depending on how old you were and what generation you represented when you went into the pandemic in 2020, that very much seasoned your experience and completely changed the trajectory of how you were going to function outside of it. My case in point, I think I gave the example in our first season. My grandmother, you know, like almost 100. And honestly, the pandemic didn't really do much for her. Nothing changed. Like, she was just like, "Uh-huh,"
No,
because
yeah.
what ifs? And you look at that and you think how you would assume someone that's almost 100 would be the most vulnerable during a global pandemic, but you recognize, from a health standpoint, it doesn't really do much, doesn't really go out, wasn't exposed a whole lot, and then because they don't live in a home, they were still independently living when the pandemic came. They were already digital. I mean, my grandmother decided to get on Facebook like over a decade ago. So in the pandemic, she just sort of like lived her regular life. Plus, she remembers the last pandemic. And when that happened, she had none of the conveniences.
Right.
And in this pandemic, she had all of the conveniences. So it's interesting that, an almost centenarian, their perspective on that, however many years it lasted, depending on who you talk to, it lasted 2 years, 5 years. Some people think we're still in it in 2026. The reality is for some generations, they just went through it very differently.
Yeah. And I like that it came back to technology because really, at the end of the day,
Mhm.
management is a technology of the Industrial Revolution.
Agreed.
It allowed us to scale.
And it really was incredibly successful.
And it is. And I never want to take away from it.
Yeah.
However, I think
Yeah.
coaching is the new technology of the 21st century engagement.
Yes.
And I would hazard to put out there
Mhm.
that given full fledged, it will produce more than management would be considered.
Yeah, I agree with you. So for that, I will give the CEO of WD-40 the win. Gary
There it is.
Ridge, you get the win. Even though I think there's a much more nuance going on there, but definitely it's a move in the right direction, I think.
And maybe we need new language, just like we need new language for our technologies.
Well, and I think we do need new language because language is, oh man, talk about our expectations. We hear a word and we know what it means, and that certainty makes us hold on to that in a way that can be really rigid and not allow for curiosity. And we do need to be curious and think outside of our expectations.
Well, I'm curious for our next conversation. I'm curious what language we're going to create next. And I do want to say some thank you for today. That this discussion is important.
I think so.
And it needs to keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Martin.
All right. Thank you, Amber. And Gary, if you're listening, thank you.